The grand palace of the Zaxori Empire stood tall on the crimson planet of Mortaxis, its spires reaching toward the three suns that circled the sky. The Zaxori were feared across 12 galaxies for their strength and battle prowess. They stood 9 feet tall with tough exoskeletons that could withstand most weapons. Their society valued power above all else. King Zoltar ruled the empire with unquestioned authority. He had conquered 3 neighboring systems and expanded Zaxori influence farther. Than any ruler before him, his warriors were loyal, his generals clever, and his enemies few. The king had everything except an heir who could continue his legacy. Princess Vexia was born during the great meteor shower, a sign that should have promised greatness, but from birth she was different. Her exoskeleton was thin and fragile, lacking the characteristic hardness of her species, where other Zaxori children could withstand tremendous force. Vexia bruised easily and tired quickly. The royal physicians tried everything: exotic treatments, rare minerals, special diets, but nothing strengthened her shell, despite her physical weakness. Vexia had a brilliant mind. She mastered strategy games that stumped royal advisors. She learned languages with ease and understood political nuances beyond her years. But none of this mattered in Zaxori culture. A ruler needed strength above all else. The Council of Elders frequently reminded the king that his daughter would never be fit to lead on the morning of Vexia's 16th cycle celebration. The princess stood before her reflection chamber. Her thin exoskeleton shimmered with iridescent oils applied by servant drones for the ceremony. Today she would be presented to the empire as a potential heir, despite the whispers of doubt that followed her everywhere. She straightened her posture and practiced the royal stance. Her limbs trembled with the effort. King Zoltar paced in his private chambers considering his daughter's future. He had consulted with scholars, explorers, and even a mysterious oracle from the Outer Rim, all to find a solution for Vexia's condition. The oracle had given him an unexpected answer. Humans, the soft creatures from the distant blue planet, possessed something the Zaxori lacked: adaptability, persistence, innovation. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, seen as curiosities rather than threats. Their pink skin and rounded features seemed laughable compared to Zaxori might, but Zoltar had studied reports of human achievements. They survived, despite having no natural armor or significant strength. They built technologies advanced for their development stage, and most interestingly, they could become stronger through deliberate stress, a concept foreign to exoskeletal species who were born with their strength. The king's spies had captured a human female during a routine border patrol near the neutral zone. She was traveling on a merchant vessel, studying alien cultures. According to the reports, she was called Lily. Mason the king had ordered her brought to the palace as a gift for his daughter, not as a servant but as a teacher. Though he told no one this part of his plan, the celebration hall buzzed with hundreds of elite Zaxori military leaders, politicians, and nobles. The princess entered. Walking carefully to hide her weakness, she took her place beside the king on the raised platform. As tradition dictated, King Zoltar began the ceremony, presenting Vexia with gifts befitting her station: rare metals from distant moons, ancient weapons from the royal vault, and a small fleet of personal combat ships. Then the king gestured to the guards, who brought forward a small figure covered in ceremonial cloth. The crowd murmured in confusion as the cloth was removed, revealing a human female. She stood barely 5 feet tall with pale skin and auburn hair. Her eyes scanned the room with obvious fear, but she held herself with surprising dignity, given her circumstances. "This is Lily Mason of Earth," the king announced, "my gift to Princess Vexia." The crowd fell silent, then erupted in confused chittering. Why would the king give his daughter such a weak creature? Some wondered if it was meant as an insult. Others thought perhaps it was food. Vexia herself stared in confusion at the small pink being. Vexia had studied humans in her educational programs but had never seen one in person. She approached Lily carefully, noting how the human tried to maintain eye contact despite clearly being terrified. The princess felt a strange connection to this creature. They were both considered weak by Zaxori standards, yet something about the human stance suggested an inner strength. Lily was taken to chambers adjoining the princess' royal suite. The rooms had been modified with human requirements: air composition, temperature, and gravity adjustments. The human was given translator implants and basic information about palace protocols that night. Vexia visited Lily, finding her staring out at the unfamiliar. "Stars, why did my father give you to me?" Vexia asked directly. Zaxori did not believe in subtle conversation. "Don't know," Lily answered honestly. "I was studying cultural exchange patterns when your ships intercepted our vessel." Vexia circled the human. Noting her soft exterior, "Are all humans as fragile as you?" Lily smiled. A gesture Vexia recognized from her studies. "We're not fragile. We're adaptable." "There's a difference." "Adaptable?" The princess repeated the word as if testing its meaning. The human nodded. "We start weak, but we can become strong through training and practice. We learn, we change, we overcome." Vexia considered this concept. It contradicted everything Zaxori believed about strength being innate and unchangeable. The princess suddenly understood. Her father's gift. He had brought her someone who might understand her situation, someone who might have solutions. Zaxori would never consider, "Can you teach me to be strong like a human?" Vexia acidly looked at the towering insectoid princess whose exoskeleton gleamed in the dim light. "It would be different for your species, but yes, I think I can help you become stronger. Not like other Zaxori, but in your own way." For the first time in her life, Vexia felt hope. Perhaps there was a path forward that didn't require her to be something she could never be. Perhaps this strange, soft creature could show her a different kind of strength. As the three suns set on more taxes, Princess Vexia and her unusual gift began to form a plan that would eventually change the empire forever, though neither of them could have predicted just how far-reaching those changes would be. The following weeks brought major changes to Vexia's routine. Lily observed how the Zaxori trained, focusing on impact resistance and brute force exercises that emphasized their natural strengths. This approach would never work for the princess, whose fragile exoskeleton couldn't handle such stress. Lily needed to create something entirely new. One evening, Lily found Vexia attempting to lift ceremonial weights in her private training chamber. The princess was struggling, her limbs shaking dangerously. Close to injury, Lily stepped forward. "Stop, you'll hurt yourself." Vexia dropped the weights with a heavy clang, frustration evident in her posture. "This is how warriors train. How am I supposed to become strong if I cannot even lift the beginner weights?" Lily approached carefully. "This isn't the right approach for you. These exercises were designed for standard Zaxori physiology, not for your unique body unique." The princess chittered, a sound Lily had learned indicated bitter amusement. "You mean defective, not defective." "Different," Lily insisted, "and different requires different methods. Humans don't have your natural strength. So we developed alternative approaches. Can I show you?" Skeptical but desperate, Vexia agreed. Lily demonstrated basic human exercises, modified for Zaxori anatomy, focusing on control, balance, and endurance rather than maximum force. The princess followed along awkwardly, at first her movements lacking coordination. After an hour, Vexia was exhausted but had suffered no injuries or pain. This was new. Usually, training left her with microfractures in her exoskeleton and days of recovery. Lily explained her philosophy. Humans start weak, so we developed methods to become strong gradually. Safely, we focus on technique before power. Each morning before the first sun rose, they met in Vexia's chambers. Lily designed progressive exercises that worked with the princess physiology, rather than against it. She studied Zaxori anatomy through palace records and adjusted human training principles. Accordingly, what emerged was a hybrid approach unlike anything seen on Mortaxes. Lily also taught Vexia about human history, sharing stories of smaller forces defeating larger ones through strategy and innovation. The princess was fascinated by tales of Earth warriors who used their opponent's strength against them. Concepts like Aikido and Judo seemed revolutionary to someone raised in a culture that valued only overwhelming force. Weeks turned into months and subtle changes began to appear. Vexia still had a thin exoskeleton, but the muscles beneath grew stronger. Her movements became more fluid, more controlled. Where once she had seemed fragile and uncertain, she now moved with deliberate grace. Palace staff noticed the difference, though none understood the cause. King Zoltar observed from a distance, saying nothing but seeing everything. His daughter stood taller, moved with more confidence, and spoke more assertively in council meetings. Yet he noted she avoided all traditional training, sessions, and combat demonstrations. The king wondered what exactly was happening behind closed doors. One night, General Kraz, the king's most trusted military advisor, approached him with concerns. "Your daughter spends too much time with the human," he said. "She neglects proper Zaxori training for whatever strange methods the Earthling teaches. This is concerning your majesty." The king considered, "This humans are weak, that is true. But they survive despite this. Perhaps they know something we do not. I will allow this experiment to continue for now." General Kraz clicked his mandibles in disapproval. The gesture bordered on disrespect. But the general had earned some latitude through centuries of loyal service. "Your daughter will never be strong enough to lead our warriors, your majesty. It would be better to name a suitable heir from a noble lineage. Perhaps even my own." The king's antennae flattened, a warning sign Kraz recognized immediately. "That is not your decision to make. General, remember your place." Meanwhile, Lily expanded Vexia's training to include practical combat techniques, adapted from human martial arts rather than trying to overpower opponents. She taught the princess to redirect force to identify weak points in exoskeletal joints and to use momentum and leverage they practiced in secret using training drones reprogrammed to simulate combat. Lily noticed that Vexia had natural advantages. Her lighter frame made her faster than typical Zaxori. Her thinner exoskeleton allowed for greater flexibility, and her heightened sensitivity gave her better reaction times. These were gifts, not weaknesses, but only if used properly. The human also taught Vexia about persistence, a concept nearly foreign to Zaxori culture. Zaxori either succeeded immediately or considered a task impossible. The idea of gradual improvement through consistent effort was revolutionary. Lily shared her own struggles, learning alien languages and cultural protocols, explaining how humans improved. Through failure, Vexia absorbed these lessons, applying them beyond physical training. She approached political problems with new perspectives, finding solutions that combined Zaxori directness with human adaptability. Court officials were surprised when the once quiet princess began offering innovative suggestions in planetary management meetings. Not everyone appreciated these changes. Some nobles whispered that the princess was becoming too influenced by alien ideas, that she was betraying Zaxori traditions. General Kraz particularly watched with growing concern as Vexia's influence with the king increased. One evening, Lily overheard servants discussing the upcoming royal tournament held once every 5 cycles. The event showcased the Empire's greatest warriors in combat trials designed to identify future military leaders. "The princess has never attended," one servant said. "It would be too dangerous for her even to watch," the general says. The conversation gave Lily an idea. The tournament could be Vexia's opportunity to demonstrate her progress, but the princess would need intensive preparation. Lily returned to their chambers with renewed purpose. When Lily proposed entering the tournament, Vexia initially refused. "Impossible," she said. "Traditional warriors would crush me instantly." "Not if you don't fight traditionally," Lily countered. "You've been training differently, you move differently, think differently. They won't know how to counter what they've never seen." "But everyone knows my weakness," Vexia argued. "The moment I enter the arena, they would target my fragile points." "What if they didn't know it was you?" Lily suggested. "What if you wore standard battle armor, your identity concealed? You could register under a colony name. No one would expect the princess to compete." Vexia considered this, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "What if I fail publicly?" "Then you fail," Lily said simply. "But what if you succeed? What if you show everyone that strength comes in different forms?" The princess paced the chamber, her new stronger muscles allowing fluid movement that would have been impossible months ago. She stopped suddenly and turned to Lily. "Very well, we will do this, but our training must intensify. I have only 2 months to prepare." Lily smiled, determination in her eyes. "Then we better get started." For the next 2 months, they trained with relentless focus. Lily pushed Vexia harder than ever before, introducing combat simulations based on previous tournament records they studied past. Champions' fighting styles, identifying weaknesses that Vexia's unique approach could exploit. They worked with the royal armorer in secret to modify standard battle gear to accommodate her lighter frame, while maintaining the appearance of traditional armor. As the tournament approached, Vexia felt something new alongside her nervousness: confidence. Not the false bravado she had attempted in the past, but genuine belief in her abilities. Lily had shown her a different path to strength, one that worked, with her nature rather than against it. For the first time, the princess felt ready to face her people's expectations not as a disappointment, but as something entirely new. The day of the tournament arrived with great ceremony. Warriors from across the empire gathered at the grand arena, a massive structure carved from red stone that could hold 50,000 spectators. The air buzzed with excitement as nobles took their places in elevated viewing boxes. King Zoltar sat upon the royal observation platform, expecting to watch the proceedings with his daughter at his side. But Princess Vexia was nowhere to be found. Royal attendants searched the palace, finding only Lily, who claimed the princess was feeling unwell and wished to observe the tournament through remote feeds from her chambers. The king was suspicious, but allowed the excuse, knowing his daughter had always avoided such violent displays. Meanwhile, in the competitor preparation chambers, a warrior in unmarked gray armor registered under the name Hezra from the outer colony of Destrix. The armor covered all identifying features, including the characteristic antennae of Zaxori nobility officials. Noted the warrior's smaller stature, but size variations were common among colony Zaxori, who often adapted to different planetary conditions. Vexia inside the armor breathed carefully, trying to control her nervousness. Lily had helped her register the previous day using falsified colony credentials. They had practiced moving naturally in the heavy armor, which helped conceal Vexia's lighter frame. The princess carried no traditional weapons, instead relying on the combat techniques Lily had taught her, focusing on joint manipulation and redirection. Rather than brute force, the tournament began with preliminary rounds designed to eliminate weaker competitors. Quickly, Vexia watched carefully from the preparation area, studying her potential opponents. She noted their aggression, their reliance on overwhelming attacks, and their predictable patterns. Most importantly, she observed their joint connections, the vulnerable points where exoskeletal plates met. When Vexia's first match was announced, she entered the arena to minimal interest. Spectators barely noticed the small colony warrior facing a much larger opponent from the Central Military Academy. The announcer gave her opponent a glowing introduction, listing his many victories while merely stating her false name and colony affiliation. Her opponent charged immediately, expecting an easy victory. Vexia sidestepped at the last moment, using his momentum to send him stumbling forward. She struck precisely at the joint behind his knee, where she knew connective tissue was exposed. The crowd fell silent as the favored warrior stumbled, then fell as Vexia applied pressure to specific nerve clusters, using techniques no Zaxori had ever witnessed. The match ended quickly, with her opponent yielding in confusion rather than pain. The crowd buzzed with surprise as the mysterious colony warrior left the arena. Without celebration, officials reviewed the match recording, trying to understand what had happened. The techniques were unfamiliar yet clearly effective. News of the unusual fighter spread through the arena. With each successive match, Vexia faced increasingly skilled opponents, yet continued to prevail. Her fighting style baffled traditional warriors who couldn't counter. What they didn't understand, by the end of the first day, the mysterious gray warrior had advanced to the quarterfinals, becoming the subject of intense speculation. In her royal chambers, Lily monitored the tournament's progress through video feeds. Smiling at Vexia's success, the princess was applying everything she'd learned, adapting human martial arts to Zaxori physiology with remarkable effectiveness. When Vexia returned that evening, exhausted but uninjured, Lily helped remove the heavy armor. "I made it to the quarterfinals," Vexia said, her voice mixing disbelief and pride. "Tomorrow I face Commander Vorzik of the elite." Lily helped apply healing compounds to Vexia's joints. "Vorzik relies on intimidation," she said. Reviewing footage of his previous matches, he roars and displays before attacking its psychological warfare. "I noticed," Vexia replied. "He also favors his right side after initial contact. His left thoracic plate is weaker, possibly from an old injury." Lily nodded, impressed by the princess's observation. They continued strategizing late into the night, analyzing Vorzik's fighting style and developing countermeasures. The next morning, General Kraz visited King Zoltar before the tournament's resumption. "Have you seen this mysterious colony warrior, Your Majesty?" he asked. The general had been watching the tournament with growing interest. "I have," Zoltar replied. "The fighting style is unusual. unusual and concerning. Kraz said these techniques target vulnerabilities in our exoskeletal structure knowledge that should not be available to common warriors. I recommend investigation. The king studied his general, sensing something beyond professional concern. Do you fear this new approach? Kraz: fear? No, your majesty. The general straightened, indignantly. But innovation in combat must be properly vetted through military channels, not displayed in public tournaments. Perhaps, Zoltar said, but I find myself curious to see how far this colony warrior will advance. The quarterfinals drew larger crowds as word spread about the unconventional fighter. Vexia entered the arena to mixed reactions. Some spectators excited to see more of her unusual techniques, others disapproving of her unorthodox approach. Commander Vorzik entered to thunderous applause, his massive frame adorned with battle decorations. Vorzik began with his trademark intimidation display, roaring and striking the ground with ceremonial force. Vexia remained motionless, conserving energy, as Lily had taught her. The commander charged, expecting his opponent to retreat instead. Vexia moved toward him, sliding beneath his guard and striking upward at his left thoracic plate, exactly where she had identified weakness. The crowd gasped as the decorated commander staggered backward. Vexia pressed her advantage, using his confusion to target joint connections and pressure points. The fight lasted longer than her previous matches, but the outcome remained the same. Vexia stood victorious while a stunned commander yielded by days. And Vexia had reached the finals, defeating the reigning champion from the previous tournament, in a match that had the entire arena standing in astonishment. King Zoltar leaned forward on his throne, his interest fully captured now, both by the fighters' skill and by the continuing absence of his daughter from the royal box. That evening the palace buzzed with speculation about the mysterious warriors. Identity nobles debated whether colony fighting techniques had evolved separately, or if outside influence was responsible. Several military officials expressed concern about the targeting of exoskeletal vulnerabilities, viewing it as dishonorable. In Vexia's chambers, Lily treated minor injuries sustained during the semi-finals. The princess was exhausted but exhilarated. Tomorrow I face General Vazik, the king's cousin. He is considered undefeated in ceremonial combat. Lily nodded. He relies on standard Zaxori techniques but executes them perfectly. You'll need to be unpredictable. Use everything we've practiced, but vary your timing. Don't establish patterns. As they prepared for the final match, Lily sensed they were approaching a crossroads. If Vexia won, questions about her identity would intensify. If she lost, they might escape notice, but the opportunity to change perceptions would be lost. Vexia seemed to read her thoughts. Tomorrow, regardless of outcome, I will remove my helmet after the match. She said, it is time my father and our people see that strength can take different forms. Are you sure? Lily asked, knowing the risks. The princess straightened her posture, a gesture she had once struggled to maintain but now held effortlessly. I began this journey to become strong enough to be heir. Now I realize I am strong enough to be myself. Whatever consequences follow. In the final day of the tournament, the arena reached maximum capacity. Citizens from across the capital crowded in, hoping to witness the mysterious warriors' final match. General Vazik entered to ceremonial music, his decorated armor gleaming his heritage as royal blood announced to appreciative roars. When Vexia entered, the crowd response was mixed, but considerably more interested than days before. King Zoltar watched intently as the smaller warrior moved with unusual fluidity across the arena floor. Something about the movement seemed familiar to him, though he couldn't place why. The final match began. General Vazik circled cautiously. Having studied recordings of the previous fights, he attacked with controlled precision, forcing Vexia to defend more actively than in previous matches. The crowd watched in fascination as two completely different fighting styles clashed. For nearly an hour, they fought. Vazik with power and traditional technique, Vexia with speed and innovative approaches. The general landed several powerful blows that would have incapacitated a normal opponent. But Vexia absorbed and redirected the force using principles Lily had taught her gradually. Vazik's attack slowed, while Vexia maintained her energy through efficient movement. The decisive moment came when Vazik committed to a powerful finishing strike. Vexia sidestepped and used his momentum to unbalance him, applying pressure to specific neural clusters that temporarily paralyzed his right side. The general fell, unable to continue the match. Officials declared the mysterious colony warrior victorious. The arena fell silent in shock as Vexia stood center stage. She reached up slowly, removing her helmet. The collective gasp was audible across the entire arena as Princess Vexia revealed herself. Her royal markings unmistakable, King Zoltar rose from his throne, his mandibles slack with astonishment. Silence held the arena as Princess Vexia stood, revealed, her victory undeniable, her identity shocking the crowd. Stared at the royal daughter, known for her weakness, who had just defeated the Empire's greatest warriors using techniques never before seen in Zaxori combat. King Zoltar descended from his viewing platform, approaching his daughter with measured steps. The king's voice carried across the hushed arena. "Explain yourself, princess." Vexia stood tall. "I wish to prove my worth. Not through birth but through ability. I have trained and competed fairly using no technology or enhancement. Only new methods. And who taught you these methods?" the king asked, though he suspected the answer. "My gift from you?" "Father," Vexia replied. "Lily Mason of Earth has shown me that strength comes in many forms, that adaptation can overcome limitation." Murmurs spread through the crowd as understanding dawned. The human gift had somehow transformed the fragile princess into a warrior king. Zoltar studied, his daughter seeing not just her victory, but the confidence and poise she now carried, qualities that impressed him more than combat prowess alone. The king turned to address the spectators. "My daughter has demonstrated the true meaning of strength, not merely power but the intelligence to apply it effectively." He placed a ceremonial medallion around Vexia's neck, marking her as tournament champion. The crowd erupted in cheers, though some nobles, notably General Kraz, remained seated, their disapproval evident in the days following the tournament palace. Life transformed. Vexia was no longer hidden away but celebrated her victory, inspiring discussions throughout the empire about traditional versus innovative combat techniques. The king formally recognized her status as heir apparent during a public ceremony, citing her demonstration of royal qualities beyond physical strength. Not everyone embraced these changes. General Kraz particularly viewed the situation with growing alarm. He gathered like-minded nobles in secret meetings where he voiced his concerns. "The princess uses alien techniques that exploit our natural vulnerabilities." He told them she follows human ideas that undermine Zaxori tradition. If she becomes queen, our entire way of life could change. Kraz found sympathetic ears among traditionalists who feared change and military leaders who worried about strategic vulnerabilities. Lily sensed the growing resistance, observing how certain officials avoided the princess or spoke to her with thinly veiled disdain. She warned Vexia to be cautious. The princess, however, was focused on expanding her training, establishing a small academy within the palace where she taught her hybrid techniques to young Zaxori who, like her, had physical limitations that prevented traditional combat training. These students thrived under her guidance, developing fighting styles adapted to their unique physicalities. King Zoltar watched these developments with interest, particularly noting how his daughter's students progressed. He began to see possibilities beyond tradition, possibilities that might strengthen the empire in unexpected ways. He invited Lily to private meetings, questioning her about human adaptive capabilities and learning methods. During one such meeting, Lily explained, "Human history is full of examples where necessity drove innovation, where limitation inspired creativity. We became stronger, not by changing our physical form, but by changing our approach." King considered this. "Humans have survived despite your obvious physical disadvantages." "How we cooperate," Lily said. "We share knowledge, we adapt, and most importantly, we view diversity as strength, not weakness. Different abilities give us different perspectives, different solutions." These conversations influenced the king, who began implementing subtle changes in imperial policy, encouraging innovation alongside tradition, valuing strategic thinking alongside physical prowess. These shifts alarmed General Kraz, who saw his traditional power base eroding. Meanwhile, Vexia continued to develop her unique combat style, blending Zaxori strength with human adaptability. Each day her confidence grew, as did her influence among younger Zaxori who saw in her a different path to achievement. Lily remained by her side. Now officially named royal advisor, the first human to hold such a position. One evening, Lily overheard servants discussing an unusual meeting. General Kraz had summoned high-ranking military officials to his private compound outside the capital. According to rumors, he spoke of protecting Zaxori traditions from corrupting alien influences. Lily immediately reported this to Vexia. The princess took the information directly to her father, who had already received similar reports from loyal sources. It seems Kraz cannot accept change, the king said. I will speak with him before this could happen. General Kraz appeared at court with formal charges against the princess. He claimed her combat techniques violated ancient protocols by exploiting exoskeletal vulnerabilities, knowledge that was forbidden to share outside military leadership. He demanded an investigation into both the princess and her human advisor. The accusation created an uproar in court. Kraz had chosen his moment carefully when many traditional nobles were present. Vexia faced the general directly. If you believe my methods, dishonorable, challenge me to ceremonial combat. Let us settle this in the traditional way. The court fell silent. Ceremonial combat was an ancient rite that superseded all other proceedings. Once invoked, it could not be refused without losing honor. Kraz had not expected this direct challenge from the princess. He had assumed she would defer to legal proceedings where his influence might prevail. General Kraz, you are challenged, the king announced formally. Will you accept? Trapped by tradition. Kraz could only agree. I accept 3 days hence in the sacred arena, as our ancestors decreed. The news spread rapidly throughout the capital. Ceremonial combat between the princess and the general would be a spectacle unprecedented in recent history. Lily was horrified when she learned of the challenge. Vexia, what have you done? Ceremonial combat has no rules. Kraz will show no mercy. The princess remained calm. I had no choice. This confrontation was inevitable. Better to face it directly than allow him to undermine us through political maneuvering. But he's larger, stronger, and has centuries more experience, Lily argued. Vexia touched her friend's shoulder, and that's exactly why he'll lose. He cannot imagine being defeated by someone like me. His arrogance will be his weakness for the next 3 days. Vexia and Lily prepared studying recordings of Kraz's previous combats, analyzing his fighting style. Identifying patterns and weaknesses, the general relied on overwhelming force and intimidation tactics that had served him well against traditional opponents, but might prove less effective against Vexia's unorthodox approach on the morning of the combat. The sacred arena filled beyond capacity. Citizens from across the empire gathered to witness this historic confrontation. King Zoltar presided from the ancient throne of judgment, his expression unreadable as tradition required. Lily stood among the royal advisors, her concern evident despite her attempts to appear confident. General Kraz entered first, wearing ceremonial battle armor adorned with trophies from previous victories, his massive frame drawing appreciative murmurs from traditionalists in the crowd. He performed the ritual combat salute to the king, then turned to await his opponent. Vexia entered wearing minimal armor, focusing on mobility rather than protection. She had learned that her advantage lay in speed and precision, not in withstanding direct blows. She completed the ceremonial salute, then faced the general, who towered over her. Begin, the king commanded. Kraz attacked immediately, hoping to end the combat quickly with overwhelming force. Vexia evaded, moving with fluid grace developed through months of training. The general pursued relentlessly, each attack more powerful than the last. Yet he could not connect solidly as Vexia redirected and avoided his strikes. For the first hour they continued this dance. Kraz attacking, Vexia defending. The crowd watched in fascination as the princess applied techniques never before seen. In ceremonial combat, Lily observed with growing hope, noting how the general was tiring, his movements becoming less controlled, more desperate. Vexia had paced herself. Conserving energy as Lily had taught her, she began to counterattack, targeting specific points where Kraz's exoskeleton connected, focusing on nerve clusters and joint membranes. The general roared in frustration as the small princess evaded his most powerful attacks, while delivering precise strikes that gradually weakened his defenses. The turning point came when Kraz overextended during an attack. Vexia sidestepped and struck a specific nerve cluster beneath his arm, temporarily paralyzing his right side off balance and partially immobilized. The general stumbled. Vexia seized the advantage, applying a complex hold that used his own weight against him. Within moments, the mighty general found himself pinned, unable to move as Vexia maintained pressure on critical nerve pathways. "Yield," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "There is no shame in recognizing a superior technique." "Never," Kraz growled. "I would rather die than surrender to alien corruption." Vexia increased pressure slightly. "I have no desire to harm you, General, only to show that there are different kinds of strength. Different paths to victory. Yield and help us build a stronger empire together." The general remained silent, his pride preventing surrender even as his body failed him. King Zoltar rose from his throne. "Approach the sacred circle," he commanded. Vexia released her hold, stepping back in respect as her father entered the combat arena. The king examined the general, then turned to the crowd. "General Kraz is unable to continue combat. Princess Vexia is victorious." The aftermath of Vexia's victory over General Kraz sent ripples throughout the empire, changing Zaxori society in ways no one could have predicted. The princess, once pitied for her weakness, became a symbol of innovation and adaptation. Young Zaxori, particularly those with physical differences, began to seek alternative paths to achievement. Inspired by her example, King Zoltar summoned his council, announcing new policies that incorporated both traditional strength and innovative approaches. "We have valued only one kind of power for too long," he declared. "The princess has shown us that adaptation can be as important as raw strength. Both will be necessary as we face new challenges in the galaxy." General Kraz recovered physically, but his influence diminished. Many of his supporters distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with his defeat. Others genuinely reconsidered their positions after witnessing the effectiveness of new combat techniques. The general himself retreated to his ancestral lands, refusing all contact with the palace. Vexia expanded her academy, formally establishing the Royal Institute of Adaptive Combat, where students of all physical capabilities could train traditional warriors. Initially scoffed at these efforts until the princess invited them to sparring demonstrations. The result silenced many critics as her students consistently defeated larger, stronger opponents using specialized techniques. Lily found herself elevated to unprecedented status for a human. The king's decree named her Royal Innovation Advisor, with authority to study and implement adaptive strategies across multiple sectors. She worked closely with Zaxori scientists to develop new technologies that complemented natural abilities rather than trying to overcome perceived weaknesses. Word spread beyond Mortaxis about the Zaxori princess, who fought like no other. Alien diplomats arrived, seeking audiences, requesting demonstrations, and offering cultural exchanges. The empire's reputation transformed from being feared solely for brutality to being respected for sophistication and adaptability. 3 cycles after the ceremonial combat, disturbing reports reached the empire. A hostile species, the Dresner Confederation, had begun aggressive expansion in neighboring systems. Their strategy involved overwhelming force, targeting planets with valuable resources. Zaxori intelligence indicated the Dresnar had developed weapons specifically designed to penetrate exoskeletal defense. Traditional military advisors recommended immediate force concentration, building larger battleships and developing stronger armor. King Zoltar listened to these suggestions, but also turned to his daughter and her human advisor for alternative perspectives. Lee studied Dresnar battle records, noting patterns. The humans would recognize a classic predator approach, expecting prey to flee. They pursued with single-minded determination, but showed limited tactical flexibility. Their strength was also their weakness. They were predictable. Vexia proposed an unprecedented approach. What if, instead of meeting force with greater force, we adapt? We use their expectations against them. Like I did with General Kraz, she suggested, creating a specialized response force drawing from graduates of her academy. Warriors trained in adaptive techniques rather than traditional combat. The king approved this experimental division despite objections from military traditionalists. Vexia and Lily worked tirelessly, developing new strategies that leveraged Zaxori natural strengths while compensating for vulnerabilities. They studied Dresner physiology, identifying pressure points and behavioral patterns they could exploit. When the Dresner fleet approached Zaxori territory, they encountered not the head-on resistance they expected, but a complex defensive strategy that confused their targeting systems. Small, highly maneuverable ships engaged, then retreated, leading Dresnar forces into prepared positions where specialized weapons targeted specific vulnerabilities. The conflict lasted several weeks, but the outcome stunned the galaxy. The mighty Dresnar Confederation suffered their first major defeat. Their seemingly unstoppable expansion, checked by Zaxori, forces half their size. What the Dresnar couldn't understand was how thoroughly the Zaxori had studied them, how completely they had adapted their tactics to exploit specific weaknesses. In the victory celebration, King Zoltar publicly acknowledged his daughter's contribution. Her adaptive combat division had proven decisive in protecting the Empire against a superior force. He formally declared Princess Vexia his heir apparent, a declaration met with widespread approval, even from traditional quarters who could no longer deny the value of her approach. Lily stood beside the princess during the ceremony, remembering the frightened girl she'd met 3 cycles earlier, who could barely maintain royal posture. Now Vexia stood confident, a leader who had transformed not just herself but her entire society. The human felt pride in what they'd accomplished together, but also recognized that her role was changing. After the ceremony, Lily found Vexia on a palace balcony overlooking the capital. "You've achieved everything you wanted," the human said. "Your father's approval, the respect of your people." Recognition as Herr Vexia turned her iridescent exoskeleton, catching the light of the setting suns. "I achieved more than I wanted," she replied. "I wanted personal strength but discovered something greater. The strength that comes from challenging traditions that no longer serve us." "What happens now?" Lily asked. The princess gestured toward the city beyond. "We continue to evolve. Not just me, not just the military, but our entire approach to the galaxy." She turned to her friend. "I want to establish a galactic academy dedicated to interspecies cooperation and knowledge exchange where humans, Zaxori, and others can learn from each other." "Ambitious." Lily smiled. Vexia chittered with amusement. "You taught me that humans dream big despite your limitations. Perhaps that's your greatest strength." News of the proposed academy spread quickly, drawing interest from species across the galaxy. Many curious about the human adaptive techniques that had transformed Zaxori combat. Several Earth governments sent diplomatic envoys eager to establish formal relations with the Empire. 10 cycles after Lily's arrival on Mortaxis, the Galactic Academy of Adaptive Knowledge opened its doors in a ceremony attended by representatives from 27 species. King Zoltar presided with Princess Vexia at his side. Together they welcomed the first class of interspecies students and instructors. Lily, now serving as Academy Director, addressed the gathering. "The greatest strength of any species is not physical power, but the ability to adapt to overcome limitations through intelligence and cooperation. What began as a gift between a father and daughter has grown into something that will benefit all our peoples." That evening, Vexia and Lily walked through the Academy gardens, reflecting on their journey. "When I first received you as a gift, I was disappointed," the princess admitted. "I wanted weapons or technology, not a small pink creature who seemed weaker than." Lily laughed. "I was terrified, certain I'd end up as food or a specimen. Who could have imagined this outcome?" Vexia gestured to the academy buildings where lights glowed as students from different worlds shared knowledge. "I learned that strength isn't what I thought it was. It's not about having the hardest shell or the strongest limbs, it's about adaptation." Lily added, "Finding your own path forward when traditional routes are closed." The princess nodded, looking up at the stars visible through the atmospheric dome. "Somewhere out there are other species facing their own challenges, their own limitations. Perhaps what we've built here will help them find their own unique strengths." Across the galaxy, news spread of the unusual partnership between a Zaxori princess and her human advisor. Species once dismissed as weak began to be sought out for their adaptive capabilities. Humans particularly found new respect as teachers and advisors. Their ability to innovate despite physical limitations now seen as valuable rather than pitiable. General Kraz eventually returned to public life. Though in a different capacity, his defeat had forced personal reflection. He approached the academy, offering his extensive military knowledge to complement the new techniques being taught. His presence bridged the gap between traditional and innovative approaches, helping conservative Zaxori accept progressive changes. King Zoltar, in the twilight of his reign, looked back on his decision to gift his daughter a human with satisfaction. What had begun as a desperate attempt to help his fragile child had transformed the empire, making it stronger. more resilient and better positioned in the galactic community than brute force alone could have achieved. The story of Princess Vexia and Lily Mason became legendary throughout known space, a tale told to children of many species about finding strength in unexpected places, about the power of cooperation across differences, and about how sometimes the greatest gifts come in forms we don't initially recognize. When asked about the secret to their success, Vexia would always give the same answer. True strength isn't about dominating others. Through power, it's about adapting, overcoming, and finding your unique path forward, a lesson she had learned from a small pink creature who had the courage to show a princess how to become the mightiest warrior in her own way.